Welcome back to Toy Story 2, and now we're doing Airport Infiltration! Dun 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 dun. Well, Buzz runs a lot in this game, so it fits.
You have saved our lives. We are eternally grateful.
Will you just leave me alone?
Puppy!
Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like a little girl.
What's Slinky's
fragile stick or something you could put on that, because I know what goes on back there. I had a box of cookies once it came back as crumbs.
The mystic portal.
Yeah, so back when you can actually argue with airport security.
I mean, it depends on where in the world you are.
I mean, remember, well, that's the thing, Shiro, this was done I think, actually, no, what year this was released?
1999.
1999, the same year as the movie.
Remember, Shiro, like, again, pre-2001, so airport security was still very sketchy, potentially.
Okay. Okay. This is something that I actually never understood. Okay, and remember, like I said, this was already a thing based on this movie. At least it was already a thing pre 9/11. So of course, it has nothing to do with anything. Okay. So, what is? I can understand, of course, that when you're in an airport, they scan your suitcases to make sure you're not carrying anything illegal and all that shit. I get that. I get that. But why is it that we can't just, scan the suitcase to make sure it's legit, and then allow the passenger to take the suitcase with them? Why does it have to go through all those conveyor belts and shit?
Okay. Here's the thing. You are allotted to bring stuff on a plane here. The stuff that usually goes on the conveyor belts, though, is stuff that would not fit on the plane.
Yeah,
it goes in the undercarriage, I think it's called.
Pretty much, yeah.
And since there's a lot of trafficking in terms of different flights that have to go around the same time, we have to essentially follow a particular path that then the attendants on the specific flight have to, gather around, make sure everything's there, and then carry towards the actual plane so that they can, handle there. It's a thing that has been regulated to make sure that, the attendants do that instead of the actual people who carry around their bags, because time and time again it has been proved that the bags were lost as a result of a process. So we basically streamlined to be, don't worry, for the stuff that needs to go, inside the cargo, we'll take care of that.
It's why bags that are smaller than suitcases are called carry-on bags, because, those are bags that you can actually carry on with yourself,
And they go through their own scan entirely.
Yeah.
Sure, I guess that's fine.
I mean, to be fair...
I forgot if I ever asked you, Pedro, have you ever actually taken a plane?
Nope, I never left my country.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I know a lot of people who haven't.
No, my country may have its flaws, but I like it here, so...
Oh, no.
Oh, I can imagine, but not even for tourism.
I just found it weird that you've never been on a
To
plane
be perfectly
before.
honest with you, Theo, I'm a very homey type of guy. I don't really care.
Fair enough. Hey, as the Wizard of Oz told us, there's no place like home.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me wrong, I do eventually go into other, like maybe some neighboring cities and stuff to, go see sights and stuff like that, or just go shopping, or anything of the sort. But
Joe, would you know who the Wizard of Oz? Would you know who the Wizard of Oz also was?
A fraud.
Yeah, so why should I take anything he says?
Because they were not his words, but Dorothy's.
Yeah, to be fair, just when I said with the Wizard of Oz, I was talking about the title.
I thought you meant the actual wizard.
No, they're right. That was
Dorothy's
line.
Now that I think about it, despite the show being named after him, the actual wizard kind of really doesn't do much in the grand scheme of things when you think about it.
Because he's a prick.
I guess,
very more relevant.
He's an actual wizard.
He has more relevance in the book, actually.
I guess.
Like Dwibbs, trust me, in Wicked, he's an even bigger.
Remind me, Teo. Isn't the 1939 movie more based on the first book, or at least one of the first ones, maybe?
No, like you said, it cuts a couple of stuff. So.
Yeah, okay. Let's be honest, the 39 film, we love it and all, but if in regards to being an adaptation for the book, it cuts out a lot.
Sure.
It really cuts out a lot.
I
And
mean,
not only
could you imagine being a TV show or something if you want to do the justice?
Not only that, but the 39 film is kind of a case where, you know, it's remembered more than the book, so people may be a bit weirded out when it turns out, hey, you know, stuff from that movie is kind of what people use for the adaptations rather than the actual book. For example, the witches originally were not related at all, but it's the 39 film that made, you know, the Wicked Witch of the East the sister of the Wicked Witch of the West here and there. Now, some other adaptations like The Wiz did take that into account as well. But my point is that the 39 film is, well, it's stuff like Jaws and Jurassic Park. Hey, you may not have known that this was actually a book before, and get this, a lot of changes are probably stuff that you recognize as canon more than the original tale. It's sort of like what Disney does on a normal basis.
I guess.
I mean, I'm sure Disney wished they could say that they owned a lot of these fairy tales, but by God, they do a good job trying to convince people that they do own them. Especially when it comes to cases like Little Mermaid.
Oh, remember that's actually
everyone
that's actually what was up when Funimation made Pinocchio and the Magic Emperor, the evil Emperor. I think that was the name.
Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night.
That's it, Emperor of the Night.
Pedro.
Funimation did Pinocchio.
No, Filmation.
I think you mean Filmation, not Funimation.
Oh, okay. Well, regardless, Filmation did it, and Disney apparently was objecting to it. So Filmation was all like, "Fuck you, Pinocchio is actually not public domain, so you don't get to come with it." Same thing when
That said,
I didn't really know Filmation for him.
That said, this is one case where Disney did have some leeway regarding this, because what Filmation's plans to do with stuff like Snow White, Happily Ever After, and Pinocchio, Emperor of the Night, was to make unofficial sequels to the
capitalize on the success of much like Good Times Jet Lag. We were trying to capitalize on brand name recognitions of those specific adaptation, even though they were correct that those stories are technically public domain.
So here's the thing. The Filmation movies were intentionally made as unofficial sequels, so essentially, story-wise, you would consider the Disney versions to be the prequels to those respective sequels.
And yeah,
and unfortunately,
Disney had every right to ask questions.
That's the thing. The courts kind of did rule in Disney's favor because, believe it or not, before the movies came out, the character designs were a lot more similar to the Disney versions as well here and there.
Yep.
I mean, okay, now, far be it from me to say that they were immediately bad just because they were trying to cash in on the Disney fame. They just have a lot of problems still.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, folks. We will cover those soon enough. But first, of course, we have to commentate on the first movies.
Yep. I'm a bit more lenient when it comes to that kind of stuff. My favorite movie, 2001, while is more inspired by the book rather than an adaptation per se. And even Arthur C. Clarke helped Kubrick write the movie, even.
Pretty much. And even dismissed by saying that the book and the movie can be considered essentially two alternate continuities, and yes, no. He basically said that whatever easy floats your boat for canon is okay. Yeah. Much less is Marvel's comic run about that, but it's a story for another time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Jack here. I absolutely love Jack Kirby's art, but it's so unfitting.
It depends on. At the end of the day, it's more. But for me, as always, it's always about more capturing the spirit of the source material. Not necessarily the specifics. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have the specifics too, but the spirit is the most important thing for me. Hi Buzz, if you can find 5 little tiny passengers for my next flight, I will give you a piece of planet token. I already have one of them actually.
But you need 5. Okay, to also mention something quickly about it, this is actually the level that has my favorite soundtrack of all. I don't know how we managed to do it, but it's similar to Sonic 3D Blast, Rusty Ruins Act 2 for the Saturn version. It has all that aesthetic feel to it.
Richard Jack didn't do this one.
No.
It's weird. It kind of has a similar thought process behind.
Maybe around this point, British video game composers doing these kinds of tracks.
Remind me. Well, here's the thing. Okay. We know that Richard Jack composed for Sonic 3D Blast, but do we know if he was the sound director though? because if these two games happen to share the same, both this one and Sonic 3D Blast Saturn happen to share the same sound director, then I can definitely see why there's the similarity.
Richard Jacques was flat out working for Sega at this point.
Okay, in that case, that's what I'm wondering. Maybe when Richard Jacques went to work for Traveler's Toast to make the soundtrack for Sonic 3D Blast, maybe.
Now, what happened with that was the music itself for both Saturn and Mega Drive versions were done by Sega.
Sure, well, I know that.
Traveler's Tales people.
I know that, but do we know if Sega, do you know if the sound director of 3D Blast was also a Sega employee? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know.
Because if sound direction, that's different from composing, by the way. If sound direction was given, roles were given to Traveler's Tales themselves, then I can definitely see why there's a similarity. That's all I'm saying.
I'll be honest. I think they just sound a lot just because they sound.
Yeah, that's what I was going for in the first
Sure,
place.
I was just trying to see if I can find a common link.
Not to mention, for some, it's a bit weird.
The only common link I can think of is that they're both British.
Also, for some direction, I get if it's more tied instead to not necessarily the composing, but more like how it's, the balance between voices, sound effect, and the actual music is in the game. I do wonder if it's instead the game director that is asking the composer what should he or she compose for a specific level. Who was actually the director of Sonic 3D Blast?
John Burton. John Burton, the same guy who directed this game.
Well, that is actually our similarities then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe John Burton just really likes this kind of music track.
Well, I'm not blaming him.
Well, plus there's tracks like this in Crash.
Shit.
It's
plus
more.
There's tracks like this in, plus there's
Although,
plus there's tracks like this in Crash.
I'm always really.
Hang on. Plus, we directed Crash Map and Cortex as well, so there's similar tracks to this in there.
Okay. I'm always nervous when I'm doing very high platforming sections in this game, because I know that if I fall, I have to go all the way up again. It's so nerve-wracking.
By the way, you wanted to talk about this connection with the game. Here, now Buzz is infiltrated with Woody, but in game we actually have to rescue Woody when he's on the plane.
What?
What did Woody get teleported onto
Also,
the plane?
Jesus Christ, Jesse, what's wrong with your face?
So what happened? Did Woody get teleported into the plane, and everyone's like, "Help!"
I've already ranted enough about that, so I'm just gonna leave it alone.
And yeah, this also has my second favorite music. Again, similar to the previous one, but just different and up to date. So its own thing.
I guess it would make sense if this happened later and it was the scene where, Woody is literally dangling from the plane, but we're not there yet.
Also, why is there acid in here too?
Oh, guys, I got it. The other bit at the end of this scene where Woody's like, "Let's go home." What we didn't see was Woody getting kidnapped and forced onto a plane.
I love how it's implied that the plane we're seeing right now is going in circles.
It actually is.
So, can I jump over the green slime, Slinky, at least? No?
I don't know.
Seriously, why is every place in this game filled with green, evil slime?
Also, this is something you should really clear away from an airport runway, perhaps,
It's bad enough in a shop here.
This
is a shit airport.
This reminds me of one of the early shrine bits in Breath of the Wild, actually. There's a similar challenge you have to do to this one as well. I'm
guessing it's a lot better there.
I touched the slime there. Yeah, to be fair, yes, it is. Although to this game's credit, that game was made almost 2 decades later, so it's a bit unfair of a comparison.
Yeah.
Also, a question, Pedro, Jove, I forgot. Do we actually know in what city the Toy Story series actually takes place in?
I don't recall it ever getting.
No, it's never actually mentioned the specific city. Generic American city. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, since okay, well done, Buzz. Here is your Pizza Planet token. There you go.
But when you're rescuing Woody, the plane's about to take off.
Too bad, Webs. We have to collect Pizza Planet tokens.
But Woody's in danger.
We have to collect. See, this is exactly it. Like, it's exactly because of stuff like that that I would have personally preferred the Crash Bandicoot style of platformer. I think it would have fit the story
It's
and
more
better.
potentially the fact that you need a set amount of pizza planet tokens to collect before proceeding to the next level. Because if it was, it's kind of similar to one Tarzan game on the PS2 and GameCube, where one published by Ubisoft. We actually have to collect it. It has a structure I think similar to Crash Bandicoot, but you still need like an amount of collectibles in order to proceed to future levels, and this is what this game does as well. The Pizza Planet tokens are not there just for fluff. You need a finite amount to proceed to future levels.
Oh, I get that.
No, I was setting to Java as well, but so basically this means that just the Crash Bandicoot layer stuff probably will not help if we still keep the gatekeeping behind the Pizza Planet token collectible. It just needed to be reworked a bit better to streamline the process rather than potentially locking you away and forcing you to backtrack, which you need to do that anyway. So why do you have to force the player to do that?
It's more it's more so that this. Again, don't get me wrong. Like, it's one of those cases where I think here's my. Okay, let me compare this to Mario 64, since this is clearly the primary influence, because a lot of 3D platformers at the time were heavily influenced by Mario 64 for obvious reasons, of course.
Oh, this just in. A toy can apparently work this stuff on an airport.
Yes.
So maybe we really did need to barrel down on airport security if a toy could sabotage stuff like this.
No, don't worry. Well, there's a thing, Jova. That review that I kept mentioning throughout this playthrough also questions about other facts, like if the humans knew about the fact that toys were sentient, you can bet your ass at least the FBI would have tried to experiment some kind of military tactical level for them.
Like, immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, the consequence of that would be a bit of the plotline of Small Soldiers, ironically enough.
That would actually be quite amusing.
It's
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, when it comes to suitcase, it looks a very.
That's your 5 things to collect here.
Yeah. I love the face. But anyway, what was I? Mario 64. Okay. See, if you, like with Mario 64, it was one of those cases where Mario 64 had this thing. Okay. To this game's credit, this game doesn't X you out level. Instead, it just dumps you in the level, and you can collect as many shit as you want. So that's actually a good thing. That being said, I still would have preferred something a bit more like let me put it this way. Like, by all means, let me collect as much stuff as I want. By all means, I love that. It's just that you get put in this level, and the level itself the levels in this game, to me at least, are a bit like, don't get me wrong, there's some really nice platforming sections overall, but then you have something like Andy's backyard, or even this level which is a bit more wider and much more horizontal. And personally, like Teo, and even Teo kind of said it, I personally prefer the more vertical levels of this game, because I think the level design is much more interesting. When they do this kind of level design where it's wide, like, and you can look at that, you can go anywhere and look for collectibles. That's when I think the game is at its weakest, personally, because there's and to be fair, this is not exclusive to this game. This is just my take on early 3D platformers in general. Whenever the level, I tend to prefer these levels in these kinds of platformers to be a bit more focused, and focused on vertical exploration rather than horizontal exploration, because one of the big issues, even with Mario 64, for example, is that when they try to have a level that's like just super wide, super huge, but then there's not really that much in terms of interesting platforming, because the developers just were focused on making the environments huge. Look how much better our technology has become since the 16-bit days. It's one of those cases of, like, it's kind of like with King's Quest V, for example, where they have literally a snowy mountain right next to a forest. It's one of those cases where the developers got a bit over enthusiastic with their newfound freedom and technology. You know, there were no, and sometimes growing pains. Industry's growing pains, basically.
Final showdown.
Yes.
Versus play.
Oh my God! That model of Stinky Pete looks terrible.
Wait.
And look at Woody's model. And Jesse.
I got. Sorry, I thought Stinky Pete was with Barbie.
I think Jesse.
That's the thing. There's also the thing with also phone. There's the thing
You're supposed to turn your phones off when you're on a plane.
For the final boss, we also went for the lazy route for rehashing. These 3 bosses are actual bosses that you fight for the previous level. The cowboy is for the Al's apartment. The blacksmith is from the actual airport level we just been in, and Stinky Pete is for the previous airport level. So for the final boss. For the final boss level, we just decide to go for these 3 bosses at the same time, and you have to defeat all of them using the spinning move.
My guess is they run out of time because
that they at least gave Stinky Pete's sort of boss fight during the airport. The conveyor belt stage where he's supposed to be fought.
I can actually.
There you go. Now you're using just the simple maneuver, not the charging.
I can actually understand Theo because remember this game being a tied licensed game obviously didn't have that much of a long development cycle, so obviously they had to
need to be rushed.
Yeah. So that's most likely what happened. Yeah.
I mean, it's not even a bad game per se.
Oh no, it's not.
Honestly, it suffices just fine. It's like, although if you're really into it, trying to adapt stuff story-wise, though, yeah.
I don't find the game bad. I just find it mediocre.
At least they sounded like they balanced the noise between the noise of the plane and the actual.
There we go.
Yeah,
what's going on compared to.
Oh
the
God! No!
Oh gosh. He's vibing. He's just vibing.
Theo, I think Shang Tsung stole both Jesse and Woody's souls.
Your soul is mine.
Oh, God. I think it's time you learned the truth.
Wait, how did you get the plane back into the conveyor belt?
Over there, guys. No.
Oh,
Thank you for that close-up of.
So in this game, we don't know what happened to Pete. So all we
and this is where the bonus clip that I think you get after getting all the pizza planet tokens.
So for all we know, Woody could have just thrown Stinky Pete off the conveyor belt to his death or something.
I must go.
Well, aren't you the
I mean, it's a potentially even better conclusion if you ask me.
What's that? Bark, bark. This fella says he needs to go out back.
I guess it's okay for animals to see toys alive.
Because they cannot tell?
Well, yeah, dogs. It's not like dogs can tell, so. Not to mention, dogs don't really have the brain capacity to.
Yeah, the outtake of that was funny where it says.
What are you pointing at, Zurga?
Congratulations, you have completed Toy Story 2.
Yes, indeed, you have.
There you go. Game design, programming, John Burton. There you go.
Go
ahead, Wibbs. Your final thoughts.
Okay. It looks like a decent enough game. I'm guessing the main issue is when you is when it gets to the parts that are really to get everything in a level. But if you're just browsing through it, if you just want to beat the game in short. It seems like it could be a fun time. Although, funny story, I actually did play this game a few times when I was younger, but I haven't played it since. And that was the PS1 version.
It's the same game, just slightly worse looking.
Yeah.
Okay. So overall, it's perfectly fine. Bruce Campbell.
Yes, Bruce Campbell was a tester for Traveler's Tales at the time, apparently.
Amazing, right?
This is
interesting. So overall, it's fine. I mean, the music's the best part of it, and that's really it. It's a fine game. For Titan for Titan standard, could be a lot worse. Alright, see you guys.
Okay, Theo.
Sure. Like I said, I actually basically grew up with this, so I'm actually much more lenient towards it. The thing that I will admit first and foremost is more the fact that towards the end, even with its own rules, the game starts losing steam, and it's showcased by probably because they had to rush this turkey to be released in time. But it still showcased the fact that we're potentially also running out of ideas, even with the recycling of a final boss bit. So it's a bit of a shame. But otherwise, I really enjoyed playing this game. Sadly, nothing wrong against you, Pedro, mostly because it was your first experience. But I do say that this run doesn't do the game full justice.
Sure.
If you're actually willing to not ignore by the fact that just being okay with the fact that this is not a super faithful adaptation that goes bit to bit. This is as a first person's first collectathon for the PlayStation, or in this case the Dreamcast, is perfectly serviceable. But potentially there are better alternatives out there that you can do. This is a matter of you probably enjoyed it better if you actually did grow up with it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I also have to speak because I don't have much experience. I didn't have much experience with the first game, so I didn't know how much that was actually faithful to its own movie. But like I said, I didn't really have a problem with this, mostly because I had a degree of separation between what the FMVs were, instead of being, because they were just bonus things, instead of being actually connected to the levels we were supposed to be attached to. And the actual game. But again, I can imagine that it might not be the same thing for everyone. Next.
Sure.
It seems like a fine 3D platformer. It has some early issues that you already mentioned, but even though there's a lot more to it than the first game, this one's actually quite disappointing in terms of an adaptation, because so much of it is out of order, and its biggest issue is that there's a lot in it that doesn't make sense, like the acid, for example. Whereas the first one, everything had rhyme or reason, and even including stuff that was, cut from the movie, and it was very coherent, even despite its simplicity. This is just like, we're doing this because we can, and it's just definitely a downgrade considering what went into the first one. It seems fine, it works, but it's just, as an adaptation, it just doesn't. And I'm done.
Jova?
Yeah, it seems like a perfect game for, to introduce kids to the art of the collectathon here. It's not as complex as other collectathon games. It's relatively simple. So, gameplay-wise, it's relatively fine. Some of the power-ups are a bit weird here and there. But otherwise, it does feel nice, fun, and creative, especially with some of the bosses here and there. I will say this, again, the issue is if you're looking at this as an adaptation of the movie here and there, because it gets weird and wonky here. Don't get me wrong. I'd say overall, this is still a nice, fun, and fun game. But if you're looking at this adaptation-wise, I can see why you may get a bit bugged out by it. It's not enough to make it a bad game. It's still a good game. But I still hold to what I said, that Toy Story 3, in regards to being the full package, did it the best out of these 3 games. All right, Pedro, close us out.
The only thing I'll disagree is that, much like this game, according to what Theo said, Toy Story 3, to me, kind of runs out of steam by the end, where it kind of whimpers out without a proper... They don't even show the ending of the movie. So the ending of the Toy Story 3 game felt a bit awkward and just rushed to me, but we'll get to it. Yeah. Again, I don't want to be too harsh, because I know that a lot of people grew up playing with this one, not just Tail. I'm perfectly aware that this is one of the more well-liked Disney tie-in games. I'm aware of that. Even back when it was new, there were a lot of people on video game magazines recommending it and stuff. So I'm aware of this game's reputation. I get that. But for me personally, it's one of those things where it's just like I'm very particular about when it comes to making something like this. Like it's where you're taking this game and you're making a collectathon, which would be fine. I just think it doesn't really fit the movie that you've attached it to. It really is one of those things where it's just like I have to separate the gameplay from the movie, like Teo said. I just think, and that's fine. It's just that the first the game didn't force me to do that. So it was one area where I was slightly disappointed because Traveler's Tales got so much right in the first game, So I felt like a lot of that seamlessness really was lost in between games. But whatever. Again, separating it from the movie and just judging it on its own as a 3D platformer, it's okay. It's fine. I do have some issues with it. Like some of the gimmicks can be a bit hard to control, and the camera, as I've talked about before, is not exactly the best. But again, this applies to most of these platformers at the time anyway. So it's just really is one of those cases where the game is definitely a product of its time. And like I said before, I prefer when the game, like for example, the elevator. The elevator is actually my favorite level. I think you said it was your favorite as well too.
No, my favorite is the construction yard, but the elevator is kind of like psycho.
Yeah. Because I kind of enjoy that game levels. I prefer when this game is doing vertical exploration. I think when the levels are vertical, that's when the game is at its best, personally. Like that's when the game has more interesting level design to me. When it's trying to do the whole big and wide thing, that's when it becomes kind of it kind of becomes a bit forgettable to me. When it's a bit more compact and full of more platforming sequences stringed together, that's when the level design is a bit more memorable to me. So that's one of the main reasons why I really would have preferred if we had a more linear platformer for this, because I really think it would have fit better. But whatever, it is what it is. It's fine, but I prefer Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 3 over it. The music is fine. I'm personally not maybe I've heard the tracks here and there, and it sounds fine for what it is. Personally, I prefer these guys work for the first game in Mickey Mania, but this music is still fine. As for the graphics for the most part are perfectly fine, except for certain odd moments where I have no idea what the hell they were thinking with certain character models. Stinky Pete's character model looks hideous. I get that he's the villain, but and Woody, my God, Woody, what have they done to you? And Jessie, she literally and Jess, even though Jessie was moving, she had that quiet, smiling face that she always has when she's in toy mode. When she's immobile, so that the humans can see that she's alive. She had that face plastered on, even though she was supposed to be moving and not pretending to be a soulless toy, stuff like that. So seriously, couldn't you at least bother to make those models a bit better? I mean, I get that you probably rushed the fuck out of that finale, but Jesus Christ, those models look terrible compared to all the other ones. It's so scary. But yeah, aside from that, the graphics are again fine. The Dreamcast version is definitely the version you should go for, especially if you have an actual console to play it in. It looks slightly better, and the compression on the FMVs is better as well. So there's that. I think it also has a higher resolution, but don't quote me on that. I haven't actually checked. And that's about it. Yeah, Toy Story 2. It's a fine game. It's fine for it, especially when you're taking into consideration the time that this game was made. It becomes a lot more understandable. But it is one game that I think really does show its age by this point, especially because right after this I went on to play Toy Story 3 for the first time, and yeah, I enjoyed that game a hell of a lot better.
The bullseye races alone help out a lot.
Oh yeah, it literally starts it does exactly what I would want to. It literally remember at the beginning of 3 when we're doing that whole Old West thing where Woody is trying to save the orphans in the train. That's literally the first level of Toy Story 3. There you go. Now that's how you do it. Okay, but what? Enough. See you for Toy Story 3, everybody.
Yeah.
Ta-ta!